Our second reading is from the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verses 8 to 11. And the rabbi will be mentioning and referring to this portion of the Torah, of the Hebrew Scriptures. If you'd like to read, you can read along with me. You can find it on page 66 of your Red Pew Bible. Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 to 11. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. You, your son or your daughter, your male or female slave, your livestock, or the alien resident in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. Gracious God, give all of us ears to hear, eyes to see, and hearts that are open to receive and respond to your word and your message to us through Rabbi David today. Amen.
It's a tall order to bring God's word. Shabbat Shalom. You guys are great. You've got it. I want to talk to you about Shabbat, everyone. I want to talk to you about this sacred day that I have been so blessed to have every week, every seventh day, starting from when I was a child. We went to synagogue, my family, more than some, less than others. But the real heart of the week for us was Friday night. Friday night was a time for family and friends to come together. You can picture the table. We lit the candles. We said the blessings over the wine and the challah. I hope you've had challah, and if you haven't, we got to get you some. A festive meal. Food and family. We've got some Jewish folks here who are joining us, and you know what I'm talking about. It's hard to describe. You have to eat it to really know, but I want to paint a picture for you. So it was my bubby's cooking, my grandmother's cooking, and the conversation, the hot soup, and the connection with my dear family. It was my Zaidi, my grandfather's loving intensity, and his old world Judaism, his old world ways. And it was the guests, the people who my parents would invite over, whether family or dear friends, sometimes Jewish, sometimes not. It was a blessing to have that in my life. But I always wanted a little more, so sometimes after we would finish, I would head over to the other side of the street, our Orthodox Jewish neighbors, who extended things a little bit longer, shall we say. And I would sing with them, and we would make the blessings over the food that we had just eaten, and just lingering. That sense of just lingering. There's nowhere to go. There's no to-do list. You just get to be with the people you love. I wanted to share that experience with those who were on our Israel trip. I actually wanted to share because I wanted to give back. Because the blessings that I received up until that Shabbat were so abundant. Okay, by the way, this is my third time crying already at this service. The blessings, do you know how good you have it with Pastor Dan? I hope you know that. So I got a full week of that, and I just want more. And with the dear friends on that trip. So I wanted to give back. So I'm going to share a journal reflection that I wrote after the trip. Shabbat was magical. After nearly a week together, I went to each of our JCOG's members and said, let's make sure that we host our Christian friends as we enter Shabbat, allowing them to feel that real, powerful sense of Shabbat. We all gathered together in the hotel lobby to light Shabbat candles. We have been visiting all the holy places with their rich history and beautiful architecture, I said. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel called Shabbat a palace in time. The Sabbaths are our great cathedrals, the Jewish equivalent of sacred architecture. Now, I told the group, we will enter sacred time. We left, now entranced in sacred time, to pray at the egalitarian section of the Kotel, the Western Wall, yet another sacred space. There, we celebrated Bobby Rood's bat mitzvah as she shared her three-word kavanah, her intention for becoming bat mitzvah, to deepen my awareness. To deepen my awareness. There is a kavanah, an intention for Shabbat. Amy Rosenthal, who's here with us, shared a stirring poem inspired by her experience at Women of the Wall earlier that day, while everyone enjoyed Sarah Lurie's beautiful poem written as part of our meditation group. Then we made our way to the traditional men and women's sections of the Kotel, the Western Wall. A group of Argentinian, and I will mention well-dressed men, were dancing and singing in a circle. That's how we do it. They widened the circle as some of our interfaith group joined in. Before we left the Kotel, we sang and danced among ourselves in two circles of men and women. This time it was our turn to widen the circle as a group of teenage Jewish boys from the southern U.S. jumped into our circle. High-fiving the group after, I knew I was at least a little bit hip when they called me a good dancer. Father Rick had been kvetching, he had been frankly complaining all week that gin was nowhere to be found in Israel. His drink of choice, clearly. So after dinner, I invited everyone to meet at the hotel lobby where I had a special treat, a bottle of gin. What better way to celebrate Shabbat in Jerusalem? We were having a great, loud time that one of the hotel staffers tried to shut the party down. We would have none of it. Really, it was all smiling and joyous faces that night. A palace in time. Remember that? Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat. The Israelite people shall keep the Sabbath, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time. It shall be a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days, Adonai, God, made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day God ceased from work and was refreshed. This is no simple act. Just that act of being is a divine connection, a mirror to divinity, to God's self. We touch that place of eternity. We say Shabbat is 1/60th of the world to come. It says earlier in Exodus, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat lekodsho, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do your work. Yes, do your work, but on the seventh day is a Shabbat for God. You shall not do any work. You, your son or your daughter, your male or female slave, your cattle, or the stranger who is within your settlements. For in 6 days God made heaven and earth and sea. Hello. God made heaven and earth and sea and all that is in them, and then rested on the seventh day. Therefore God blessed Shabbat and kept it holy. What a radical concept. Even your cattle get a day off. You don't work for an entire day. This is the radical faith origin of the 40-hour-a-day work week, or these days, the 4-day work week. In the Torah, it says that we built the tabernacle in the wilderness with 39 principles of work. And the rabbis turned that and said, that holy work that we did for those 6 days, we're not going to do any of that on the day of the Sabbath. We're going to carve out a day that is distinct, where our actions, where our discussions, where everything we do is radically different. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel said, "Gallantly, ceaselessly, quietly, humans must fight for inner liberty, to remain independent of the enslavement of the material world. Inner liberty depends upon being exempt from domination of things as well as from domination of people. There are many who have acquired a high degree of political and social liberty, but only very few who are not enslaved to things. This is our constant problem: how to live with people and remain free, how to live with things and remain independent. We are so enslaved. I hate to break it, folks, but we are. Especially us moderns. We're enslaved to our phones, we're enslaved to our cars, we're enslaved to modern life. We're also enslaved to the systems of oppression that value one group over another. But the Torah says everyone gets a day off. Everyone. Now, I'm a modern liberal Jew. So how you do Shabbat, you get to define. If you're more traditional, there are going to be very set things that you do and you don't do. But I want to bring you one of my rabbis, Art Green, in this book, Judaism's 10 Best Ideas. It's a great little book. And he talks about the 10 pathways towards a new Shabbat. And I want to share some of this with you. So he talks about 5 do's and 5 don'ts. A 10 commandments, so to speak, of Shabbat. 1, stay at home. Spend quality time with family and real friends. 2, celebrate with others at the table, in the synagogue, church, with friends or community. 3, study or read something that will edify, challenge, or make you grow. 4, be alone. Take some time for yourself. Check in with yourself. Review your week. Ask yourself where you are in your life. 5, mark the beginning and end with sacred time. We light candles at the beginning of Shabbat, and we light another candle at the end. We mark the time as sacred. So those are the things you should do. But there are also things you shouldn't do. Don't do anything you have to do for your work life. Can you imagine that, taking a day off? This includes obligatory reading, homework for kids, unwanted social obligations, and preparing for work. 7, don't spend money. Whoa! Now that's a traditional one. I don't spend money on Shabbat. It's so liberating. It opens a whole other world. You should try it. Number 8, don't use the computer. Another big one. I don't do it. I love it. You should try it. Put your phones away. It's great. Or if you're going to use it mindfully with intention and purpose. How are you going to connect with people on that day? 9, don't travel. Avoid especially commercial travel and places like airports where they're going to say, have a nice day. And 10, don't rely on commercial or canned video entertainment. Those are his 10 do's and don'ts for Shabbat. I wonder what yours are. Do we have time for some? Yes. What do you think? Yeah? Okay, so we have time for some questions and answers, if there are any. We've kind of built that in. If you have any questions. Okay. How did we? Yeah, how did you meet? I'm always curious how two people meet. I was wondering how you met originally. How me and Pastor Dan? Well, we met right here, I think. Yeah. I mean, was it over lunch or coffee the first time? I think maybe
yeah, I think it was over lunch.
Yeah.
When the first week that I arrived, but previous to that, while I was still in Connecticut, after we accepted the job, I got an email, not on the Sabbath, obviously. Yeah. An email from Rabbi David. He had never met me, but welcoming me in advance, extending and opening his heart to me before I ever even landed in Stowe.
We were excited for your arrival.
Well,
yeah.
I was excited to come.
Yeah.
How difficult is it for you to keep the Sabbath starting on Friday night?
How difficult?
When you're surrounded by people who
When I'm surrounded by people who do
do it on Sunday?
it on Sunday? Yeah, so the question, especially for those who are live streaming, how difficult is it to keep Shabbat from Friday night to Saturday evening when most folks are at church on Sunday? It's not easy. It's not easy, to not celebrate at that same time as most people. On the other hand, we've got a whole community that celebrates together. So I'm not alone. We're not alone. We're together. We come together to celebrate. And I have my family, and we celebrate together. Yeah. On what day do you split wood? On what day do I split wood? That's good. You read my bio. Well, not on Shabbat. Although I'm, that's a great question. Splitting wood, I don't really consider work. It's a joy. It's in my body, and so the weekend, Shabbat or Sunday, usually. Yeah. What's that? I don't. No. All right, I want a Fiskars. All right, you let me know after. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Shabbat food or recipe?
Favorite Shabbat food or recipe? Where to begin? Well, you want salty or you want sweet? Salty. I'm thinking about, my mind immediately goes to what I grew up with, which I don't get to experience my bubby's knishes anymore, my grandmother's knishes, but oh my gosh. She would make them by hand, and for those who don't know, you got to find out. But it's a pastry dough, thinly rolled out, and then you put potato inside. That's how she did it. You can put other things, mushroom, potato, etc. And you fold it over and bake it. Yeah.
What's the difference between a synagogue and a temple?
What's the difference between a synagogue and a temple? Nothing. It's just a way of referring. Different people use different words. So you're looking at me. Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I mean, so different groups of Jews might refer. I think more Reformed Jews might use the word temple, but even then, it's not always the case. It blurs. Yeah.
My understanding is that the Sabbath and Shabbat also apply to the land. Every 7 years.
Yeah.
Is that what today?
Thank you for bringing that up. So it says in the Torah, I will repeat it. Yeah. So that Shabbat applies to the land as well. That and what's the significance? What's that all about? So the Torah says that 6 years you shall work the land, and then on the 7th year you have a Shemitah year, a year off. So even Shabbat applies to the land itself, right? What I quoted before, it referred to people and animals, but it's even more radical that you take an entire year off from the agricultural work that our shared ancestors, Israelites, did. Maybe one or two more questions. Yeah. Oh, Barbara. I have 3 boys. Yes.
Getting older, so they must have something school activities or sports on Saturday.
Yeah.
So is there flexibility for them to participate?
So we have 3 boys. How do our kids participate in sports activities on Shabbat? Because like you pointed out, it's not necessarily easy to keep Shabbat in this culture where all kinds of other things are happening on that day from Friday to Saturday. We try to find, our family personally tries to find a balance. Some families will just say no, they're not participating in that stuff. We enter into negotiations. So we do a lot of running around. In other words, maybe Allison will take the kids to soccer and then bring them over to synagogue for most of a bat mitzvah or Shabbat morning. And so we go back and forth. But we feel like basketball is part of Shabbat. As long as it's we're doing it mindfully, and thanks for asking that. Okay, I'm not done yet. I got one last.
We're on Jewish time. So.
We are. Well, I want to offer a blessing. Okay, I want to offer a blessing to end this. So, the Israelite people shall keep the Sabbath, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time. Now, Pastor Dan and Father Rick reminded me that these are our shared ancestors. And, this isn't my area of expertise. Pastor Dan can say more on this. I'm sure he will this month. But Jesus practiced Shabbat every week. And when he preached, he was preaching at the synagogue on Shabbat. So I want to ask you, we Jews like to ask questions, and so my blessing is really a question to you all of how you're going to walk in that way, to live into this shared tradition that I feel this is a gift that the Jews have kept for thousands of years, and I want everyone to know about it and to experience it. This is not something that we have to hold on to. This is something that everyone can experience. So my blessing is that you find your way to live into a day of rest every week, a day of peace and wholeness and come to that sense of holiness with family and friends and community. Shabbat Shalom. Now I'm done.